In this video, I'll be sharing with you guys my final 2024 election forecast. We've been covering this race for over 4 years now, looked at hundreds of polls, forecasts, betting markets, and it all comes down to this. In 2020, I accurately predicted Joe Biden's exact 306 to 232 electoral vote victory, and today I'm here to unveil my final 2024 electoral map prediction. And so we're just going to get right into it. No reason to waste time. We'll start off with the safe states for both candidates, races that either Harris or Trump are going to win by 12 percentage points or more. And so starting off with these safe Trump states, we have Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except its 2nd district, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, and Alaska. And now for Kamala Harris, she is going to sweep the West Coast, winning Washington, Oregon, and California. She'll also take Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. So with all of the safe states filled in, Kamala Harris is at 181 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 125, but this is nothing to worry about. He'll make up a lot of ground with the likely states. And so these are races that will be decided by 5 to 12 points. They're going to be noticeably more competitive than the solid states, but one candidate will still maintain a pretty clear advantage. We'll start off with the likely states for the former president. There's no doubt he is going to perform very well in the lower Midwest in both Iowa and Ohio. These are 2 states that he's carried consistently in the last 2 election cycles. I mean, just look at what the map looked like in 2012. Iowa went to Obama by 6%, Ohio by 3%. Just 4 years later, Trump shifts Iowa 15 points to the right, and it goes to him by 9.4%. In Ohio, we see an 11-point shift. Trump wins the Buckeye State by 8.1. In 2020, when everybody thought that Joe Biden would perform a lot better than Hillary Clinton, Trump does it again. He wins Iowa by 8.2%, Ohio by 8%, basically the exact same margins. Against Kamala Harris, Trump can probably win these 2 states by 10 points or more, but getting over 12 is going to be a bit of a challenge, so they will be placed in the likely Republican category. Next up, we have Texas and Florida, 2 additional races that simply aren't going to be close. Trump won both of these states in 2020 and 2016. Now, Texas has always been a Republican stronghold. It hasn't gone blue since 1976 and the election of Jimmy Carter. However, Florida used to always be among the most competitive in the country. In fact, in 2012, it was the only tilt state on the map. In 2016, it was once again decided by less than 2 points. Trump wins Florida by 1.2. And then in 2020, when most people expected Joe Biden to win the state back for Democrats, Trump triples his margin, and he's probably going to do something similar once again. The former president leads by around 8 points in Florida polling. He's definitely going to win by at or above a double-digit margin. Meanwhile, in Texas, things are looking good for Trump as well. He's ahead by 8 points in the polling average in a state he only carried by 5.6 in 2020, and this was when polling said he was only going to win by 1. Yes, there were polls at the very end of the 2020 cycle that said that Trump was barely going to edge out Biden in the Lone Star State. That was obviously always going to be wrong. Texas is not going to go blue for a very long time. Today, it remains likely Republican. And finally, we have the 2nd District of Maine. It's not going to be close. Trump is going to win it for a 3rd time. And so with the solid and likely states now filled in for the former president, Donald Trump retakes the lead. He's at 219 electoral votes, just 51 away from the presidency. But now we're going to fill in the likely states for Kamala Harris. Races she'll win by 5 to 12 points. We'll start off out west in Colorado and New Mexico, 2 states where Biden performed extremely well in the last election. He defeated Trump in Colorado by 13.5 percentage points. It was solid blue, while in New Mexico, Biden carried the state by 10.8. Today, Kamala Harris is on track to win Colorado by less than a double-digit margin. She'll probably carry it by 8 to 9, definitely a significant drop-off from where Democrats were 4 years ago. In New Mexico, same thing. Kamala Harris is not going to win by a double double-digit margin, nowhere near 11 points. She'll be lucky if she even scrapes by with a 7% margin of victory, so both races are going to be likely for the vice president. Next up, we have Minnesota, where I have Kamala Harris winning by just over 7 points. It is going to be more competitive than it was 4 years ago when Joe Biden carried Minnesota by 7.1%. This was when he was running with Harris as his running mate. Kamala Harris is from California, nowhere near Minnesota, but today, Kamala Harris is running with Governor Tim Walz, the literal governor of Minnesota, as her running mate, and she's barely polling above 5%. In fact, I believe she's at 4.8 over Donald Trump in the state. I mean, that truly is an abysmal margin, considering that Joe Biden did better, and Kamala Harris is, again, running with the state's literal governor. You should expect her to be winning by at least 9 to 10 points. Tim Walz was reelected by well over a double-digit margin in 2022 as governor, but with Kamala Harris on the ticket, Walz simply isn't performing nearly as well. And so Minnesota is going to be likely blue, but just barely. I have Harris winning by just over a 5-point margin. If she cannot outperform Joe Biden in the home state of her running mate, she is going to have a lot of other problems all across the map. Before we continue, over 70% of you guys are not subscribed, so please subscribe right now to help us reach 300,000. And make sure you tune in to my live election night coverage on November 5th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We're now going to move up to the Northeast, where we have New Hampshire and Maine, two states where, once again, Kamala Harris's performance is not going to be too different from that of Joe Biden's, but we are going to see a noticeable drop. Joe Biden won New Hampshire by 7.4% in 2020. I have Kamala Harris winning by around 5 to 6. Joe Biden won Maine by 9.1. I have Kamala Harris winning by around 7 to 8. So these are two races where the vice president's performance has been okay. These states generally are shifting to the left. Democrats are performing better and better each time. However, with Kamala Harris on the ballot, we are going to see a change to that pattern, as obviously she is not going to outperform the incumbent president. So both the Granite State and Maine are going to be likely blued, but just barely. And then we have the 2nd District of Nebraska, where Joe Biden won by 6.6%. But since the lines have been changed after the 2020 census, the 2nd District is actually more liberal than it was in the past. It's basically Omaha and some of its surrounding suburbs. And so Kamala Harris is on track to win by just under a double-digit margin. It'll also be likely blue. And finally, the last likely state on this map is, of course, going to be Virginia. Kamala Harris is going to win by around half of Biden's 10-point margin from 2020. I don't think she'll be able to get anywhere over 7, probably not over 6 either, but a 5-point margin of victory is plausible, considering that even Hillary Clinton won by more than 5% in 2016, and of course, her performance across the board was pretty terrible. Virginia, though, has been shifting to the right. That's one of the main reasons why Harris is going to perform so much worse than the incumbent president, but it's going to be likely for now. We're going to be a little generous to the Democrats, and so this leaves us with just the 7 battleground states. This shouldn't be surprising at all. These are the 7 races we've been covering basically throughout the entirety of the year, and with them not filled in yet, Kamala Harris is at 226 electoral votes, Trump at 219. So basically, until we get to these battlegrounds, the election is still a tie. Before we continue, I want to tell you guys about Polymarket, the world's largest prediction market, where you can track election results and instantly see who's leading. These odds react in real time to current events instead of days later like the polls. There's no bias or media spin, just pure data. Market odds reflect the collective analysis, beliefs, and wisdom of thousands of traders reacting to world events. Polymarket has also recently launched a mobile app where you can access their 2024 election forecast on the go. It's what I use every day to stay updated on the presidential race. Download it for free right now using the QR code on screen or the link in the description below. Coming back to the map, I mean, it really is just going to be this group of 7. They only make up 93 of the Electoral College's 538 votes, but they really do wield all the power. The results in all the other states are basically predetermined. Now, there were points where it seemed that Trump might do very well in Minnesota, Virginia, or New Hampshire, for example, but realistically, those are always long shots. Now, if Trump had continued to perform exceptionally well in those states, it was a possibility, but now with 1 day left to go, I'm here to tell you that that simply isn't going to happen. Anyone that's telling you that Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and New Mexico are actually competitive is simply lying to your face. And so when it comes to these 7 states, 2 of them are going to be classified as lean. The other 5 are going to be tilt. So lean states will be decided by 1 to 5 point margins, as tilt states, of course, less than 1. We'll begin down in the Sun Belt. We'll start off with the 2 lean states, and just to give you guys a spoiler here, both of them are going to go to Donald Trump. I don't have any lean states voting in favor of Kamala Harris. We're going to begin in Arizona, where Donald Trump is on track to win by around 1 to 3 points. Anything is possible just because of how close these races are, but it definitely does seem that Trump is going to come out on top in Arizona, a state that he won by nearly 4 points in 2016, but lost by 0.3 to Joe Biden in 2020. Today, Trump leads by 2.6% in the polls. I mean, just looking at the graph here, his lead has only been growing as the election has neared. He is performing very well. It is extremely unlikely that he is going to lose Arizona. This is a must-win state for the former president. If he doesn't win Arizona, the election is over, but as of right now, it is very likely that he will flip Arizona back. It's going to be the first lean red state on the map. And the other lean state is, of course, going to be Georgia on the other side of the Sun Belt. I mean, this race is very similar to the election in Arizona. Trump lost Georgia narrowly as well here, just 0.24% separated Biden and the former president. Now, both of these states, both of them were historic flips for Joe Biden in 2020. No Democrat had won Arizona going all the way back to 1996. Georgia, you would have to go back to 1992. Now, considering how historic these victories were for Democrats, Kamala Harris, who is performing significantly worse than Joe Biden, she simply isn't in a position to retain the success that Biden had here 4 years ago. Both of these states are very likely to flip back into the Republican column like they've been voting for the last 30 years. And so Georgia favors Trump by 2.3% in the polling average. We also have a new New York Times poll that shows Harris up by 1. I mean, obviously, that's going to be wrong. The New York Times always overestimates Democrats. Trump has been ahead basically since early September after Harris peaked following the Democratic convention, but Trump's lead has been growing since the middle of last month. He's in a very good position here. Georgia is fundamentally still a conservative state, and it's going to be the other lean Republican state on this map. And so just to map out Trump's potential pathways to victory here, Arizona and Georgia are must-wins. If Trump cannot win these 2 states, it is extremely unlikely he is going to be able to win any of the other toss-ups that will actually get him to 270 electoral votes. But the good news is, it is pretty likely he's going to win both Arizona and Georgia, even if he loses. So at the very minimum, this basically is his floor. All 5 of the remaining states are probably going to be decided by less than 1% or potentially just over 1%, but I will be placing them all into the tilt categories for either Democrats or Republicans because they really are just that competitive. Now, for Trump, his quickest pathway to victory would go through North Carolina and Pennsylvania. It could also go through North Carolina and Wisconsin, although the Pennsylvania path would be more likely as of right now. With Nevada, though, it only has 6 electoral votes, so winning Nevada isn't really concerned to Trump, but North Carolina definitely is. In the Tar Heel state, Trump is actually performing quite well. He leads by 1.5% in the polling average. It's pretty clear that he is the favorite. He's won North Carolina in both 2016 and 2020. It's the only swing state out of the 7 that he carried in both of the last 2 elections. He lost Arizona, he lost Georgia and Pennsylvania in 2020, but North Carolina he was able to cling on to, and he's going to win it again, although I do have it as tilt Republican. It's going to be a slightly lesser margin, even though he's led throughout the entirety of the election cycle in the polling average. The reason why I have North Carolina as being more competitive is because of Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor. He has run a disaster of a campaign. He's been involved with so many scandals. He's going to lose by nearly a double-digit margin to Josh Stein. However, in the presidential race, Robinson is not going to be able to drag Trump down, but he's definitely not doing the former president any favors, which is why I do have the Tar Heel state voting slightly to the left of both Arizona and Georgia. And so with Trump at 262 electoral votes, he is just 8 away from the presidency. He'll need any one of the 3 upper Midwestern states, and it's very likely that Pennsylvania will be the one that gets him over the top, the Keystone State with its 19 electoral votes. We do have a very close election there. Trump leads leads by 0.3%. It's definitely going to go down to the wire, but Republicans are looking good, especially with early voting. They were behind by over 1 million after the early voting period in 2020. Today, Democrats lead by less than 500,000. Their goal was to have a buffer of 500 or maybe even 600,000. They were unable to reach that, and in a state that they carried by just 80,000 votes 4 years ago, that small difference is going to be a big deal. Pennsylvania was also where the first failed assassination attempt on Trump occurred. That is going to help him a little bit. And again, in a race as close as this one, any little bit counts. So Pennsylvania is going to be the second tilt state on the map. I have it going in favor of Trump by a very narrow margin. This election is going to be close, but with victories in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, we don't actually even need Arizona, but with these 4 victories, Donald Trump does cross the finish line. He'll do a little bit more, though. Trump is also going to win Nevada, where he's ahead by 1% in the polling average. Now, a victory here is going to be difficult for the former president, as Nevada hasn't gone red since the election of 2004. That's why a win here would be such a big deal. The polls have been showing a tight race between the two candidates, but Republicans are making gains in the Silver State. Republicans won the governorship in Nevada in 2022, ousting the incumbent Democrat. And so Trump is also going to make significant gains here. It's going to be tilt Republican, with the former president coming out on top by less than half a percentage point. And finally, in Wisconsin and Michigan, these are basically toss-ups. I would generally just put them in a toss-up category and not fill them in at all. But, you know, obviously, I think you guys would want me to give an answer for each of these states. And in Wisconsin and Michigan, the polls are basically tied. Harris up by 0.3 in Wisconsin, by 0.6 in Michigan. Now, the polling is not the reason why I'm going to give them narrowly to Kamala Harris, but it's mainly because of the early voting numbers. The vice president is in a slightly better position than where she is in Pennsylvania and Nevada. And of course, we all know that Wisconsin and Michigan are going to vote to the left of those two states. And with Pennsylvania and Nevada being so close, I see the most realistic outcome as being the one in which Kamala Harris barely edges Trump out in both Wisconsin and Michigan, but I definitely would not be surprised if Trump was able to carry these two states as well. And so this is it. This is my final 2024 election prediction. Donald Trump wins with 287 electoral votes, Kamala Harris at 251. It is going to be a close race, but Trump is going to come out with a decisive victory, as he will be reelected to become the 47th president. I also just wanted to thank you guys so much for your support over the last 4 years. I mean, we've grown to become the largest election-focused channel on YouTube. If you stuck it out with me over the last 4 years, I mean, that really just means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment down below who you think is going to win the election, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Also, make sure you tune in to my live 2024 election night coverage at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and join my Discord server to participate in our 2024 prediction contest at discord.gg/elections.